We're not quite in public session yet. We're getting ready to do that. I can see it, so Pat can move it when we get to that point. Can we do that, Pat?
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. So, hey, we do have a quorum. Chris, hey, good to see you.
Hello, good to see you.
On there. So yeah, we have a quorum, and it is after a little bit after 6 o'clock. We will not be going into exec session. So go ahead and we'll call this public meeting to order. And there is a single modification to the agenda that we can accept right now.
Okay, does that happen before?
No, it happens now.
Okay, I move the agenda with the modification of a supplemental personnel report.
Second.
By Chris. It's on my phone, which I can't read, but we've all had a chance to take a look at it. Without objection, we're good. So it's added to the agenda and then be on the personnel report when we get to consent agenda. But right now, we
You don't need to actually.
we can vote if you.
It's
modifications.
Okay.
You know, all in favor? I think we're good on adding. Okay. Without it, yeah. It's we kind of blip through that one usually. But Tricia, we're good, we're running, we're good. And so public comment period starts right now. And Moira, as you are very able to do, we're going to go ahead and do it.
The first person on the list is Katie Ballage.
Hi, before I start, I just want to thank Patricia. Thank you for working with me to get my comments back into the minutes from last week. Thank you very much. My name is Katie Ballage. I was here last week. My partner, Steph, and I have 2 children enrolled at BJM. I'm just here to.
Katie?
Yep.
We can't hear you.
Can't you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I'm just here to echo my concern for the well-being of not just my children, but any children under 12 who are unvaccinated. You said last week that we're following AAP and CDC guidelines in an attempt to stop the spread of COVID in schools, but just this week, GIAC, who's following those same guidelines outside, had a 17-child cluster of positives. So I'd like to understand how the CDC guidelines that you're clinging to as justification for mandating in-school instruction will keep our kids from catching COVID inside. You mentioned we don't have enough teachers for even in-person learning. So how are we spacing our children out in classrooms that are now bigger than last year? There are rumors rumbling around that in order to maintain the 6-foot distance during meal times, that our students may have to eat in the hallways. So to recap, we're jamming more students into classrooms this year than last year when COVID-19 was not impacting children as severely. The Ithaca Voice recently reported that 20% of the cases since May have been in children. We know that Delta is already here and already impacting our children. Experts are saying that 1% of children who contract Delta will end up in the hospital. And I know that doesn't sound like a big number, but that's 1 in 100 students. When we have around 400 students per grade level, that's 2,400 students under 12. Are you willing to risk 24 of our kids being hospitalized? There are only 15 ICU beds at the CMC. There are only 20 ER beds. That's not taking into account the unvaccinated adults who are going into the hospital, drownings, accidents, car crashes. Those don't stop just because children are in the hospital. I implore you to think about how best to bring these kids back to learning this fall. We need remote options for elementary students who remain unvaccinated, not just for those with comorbidities. I understand that not everyone can be remote. This country does not support the working class. There's a clear top-down agenda to get everyone back to normal, back to work, and back into schools. Why do you think emergency unemployment benefits run out the week before school starts? the very least, we can free up some space in the classroom for students who have no choice but to go in person by allowing families the choice of a remote option. I understand that staffing shortages are a problem, but this needs to be worked out. Thank you.
Next up is Stephanie Naraki.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Naraki. I have a master's degree in public administration, and I work for one of the largest health and human services government contractors in the US. I have 2 boys enrolled at BJM, one going into kindergarten, the other second grade. I thought long and hard about what I wanted to present at this evening's board meeting. The past 2 weeks have been filled with rage, fear, disappointment, and anxiety. There have been many sleepless nights lying in bed with my partner, Katie, crying, unsure of what to do, unsure of how to keep our boys safe, unsure of how to reassure our 2 tiny humans that the grown-ups in charge have everything under control when we don't. This is larger than remote learning options, or a lack thereof, larger than the masking debate, or even the question of why staff at ICSD are not under a vaccine mandate, like so many other school districts just hours away. This is about a lack of trust between the community and the board, a lack of trust between the community and administrators. Teachers in this district are also members of the community, and with the advent of social media, their voices project much farther than ever before. It is teachers in this district who are standing up and raising the red flag this time around, when our unvaccinated children are more vulnerable than they've ever been during the entire pandemic. They have raised the flag that the Ithaca City School District is unprepared. I want to know why it is teachers raising this flag. I want to know why the board and administrators have failed to communicate to the community about the following: custodial shortages. Who will sanitize our kids' classrooms if there is a shortage of janitors? School nurse shortages. There are rumblings that some ICSD elementary schools lack an on-site nurse. Who will rapid test our kids at the immediate site of COVID symptoms? Teacher shortages. Why are there 30+ kids being packed into a single indoor classroom? And why is eating lunch in the hallway an acceptable proposed workaround? Harm is done with words and silence. The message sent with this board's silence is loud and clear. The district is unprepared for the trials ahead. I urge the district to mend these wounds by doing the following. 1, provide a list of all vacant staffing positions, broken down by school and site. 2, provide a list of the medical professionals reviewing and approving remote learning applications. We want to know if they are board certified. We want to know if these medical professionals' credentials were properly vetted according to NCQA standards. And I want to know who in this administration put together and approved the remote learning application process. At the last board meeting, it was said that there is a vortex in leadership in Albany, and the finger was pointed upwards. I say there is a vortex in leadership on the stage in front of me. Step up and make the hard decisions. Stop quivering at the idea of litigation. We are running out of time to protect our children. Thank you.
Next up is Catherine Cherna.
Hi there, it's actually Catherine Cernera. And
sorry, Catherine.
It's okay, don't worry about it, Moira. I speak to you tonight as the Vice President of the Ithaca Teachers Association to make clear the questions and concerns that secondary teachers have with the model for secondary remote learning proposed for this year. Last week, the ITA met with our members and presented the remote instructional model for secondary students to learn asynchronously through Canvas with the assistance of a district-assigned support professional. We then conducted a member survey to gather educators' reactions. Since I only have 3 minutes, I'll summarize the common themes that our 80 secondary teaching members presented, as we feel it is critical that all members of the ICSD community know that we have serious concerns regarding the tenability, sustainability, and equity of the proposed plan. Among our members, the following questions emerged. Canvas is a materials and assignment delivery system. How will students receive instruction without requiring teachers to provide hybrid lessons or specially designed asynchronous digital lessons? How will all students attend class if their teacher is sick, quarantined, or caring for a sick or quarantined family member? How will remote students engage in science labs, collaborative learning, or project-based learning experiences if they're working asynchronously? How will students who are struggling in this model work with their teachers if there are not designated office hours? How will the support professionals working with remote students supplement instruction that they have also not received? How will remote students with 504s and IEPs receive accommodations that require synchronous interactions through this asynchronous model? Who is responsible for ensuring that a student learning asynchronously receives these accommodations? What is the plan when an entire class, grade, or building needs to quarantine? These are just some of the biggest, most cumbersome questions that we have, and I'm happy to follow up in a more detailed conversation after this meeting. As educators, we feel it is extremely important that we voice our concerns with this model and ensure that all families understand that learning from home this year will not look anything like it did last year. As one member stated, posting assignments in Canvas is not equivalent to attending class. This was echoed by another member who wrote, "Canvas is not a replacement for a teacher, and it cannot replace actual instruction." We know that the start of the year is fast approaching, but one member is concerned that educators will be asked to pivot to all digital curriculum with little notice. Seems highly likely with this many unanswered questions. We understand that given the staff shortages we heard of last week and the robust and diverse programs that our district offers, figuring out how to provide an education to a small but variable number of remote students poses a huge problem. We do not have a universal solution to that problem, but we do feel very strongly that this is not an equitable solution for our students or for our educators. Thank you for your time, and I'll be following up with an email version of this statement to all of you after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Karina Lockenhoff.
Thank you. I have a high schooler who is vaccinated and a middle schooler who isn't. This district is facing the biggest challenge in this pandemic so far. Local cases are surging. The Delta variant is at least twice as contagious, but we're trying to bring back twice as many children at half the distance. I want to thank you for following CDC recommendations on hand hygiene and air filtration. Also, thank you for requiring universal masking. Both the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics agree that universal masking is a key step to ensure safety at school. Thank you for planning to test, but symptomatic testing is not enough. The latest science suggests that we should test all students at the start of the school year and then test half of the students every week. I hope you will be able to work towards getting the funding to implement that strategy. Thank you for encouraging vaccinations among students and staff. Now that the Pfizer vaccine is FDA approved, I hope you can negotiate a vaccine mandate with the teacher and staff unions. At the very least, those who are not vaccinated should be tested twice a week. The last line of defense is cohorting. Keeping students in small, consistent groups and in the same classrooms will be critical for limiting spread and limiting quarantining. The elementary schools are set to do this effectively, but I'm very concerned about middle schools. Almost all of the 6th graders and many 7th graders cannot be vaccinated. Moving between classrooms through crowded hallways is a recipe for super spreading. Please implement a cohort system in middle school where students in 6th and 7th grade can stay in the same groups and rooms throughout the day to keep them safe. Finally, your decision to limit remote learning to students with very narrow medical exemptions is causing a lot of concern for parents. Even healthy children can develop long COVID. The latest data suggests that symptoms linger in 5 to 10% of children. Some parents are not ready to take that risk, and they plan to homeschool if there's no remote option. This creates a slippery slope, and many learners may be lost to the district for good. Please broaden your access criteria for remote learning to give parents the options and choices they need. In conclusion, thanks again for following the science. Our best lines of defense are clean air, clean hands, distancing, masking, testing, vaccinating, and cohorting. You are on the right track, but I hope you can make some very much needed tweaks to keep all of our learners safe and engaged this fall. Thank you.
That's the end of the list.
And I'm not sure, I don't believe I'm seeing anyone else. No, I'm seeing staff, okay. No one else is in the room, so for public comment, and now board responses.
I will begin, and I am not making a facetious comment when I say thank you to everyone who came in here to share your very real concerns. And thank you for masking, and thank you for recognizing the importance of masking and all of the other public health measures that you have brought up. I don't know if you follow state and national education news the way people on the board do, but in many of our communities in New York State, board meetings are being invaded by dozens of people, I don't know whether they're parents or not, who are unmasked screaming at school board members who are trying to keep their students safe. You've all brought up very important points. I'm a parent of adult children and a grandparent of 2 children who will be in this district but will not be yet. I spend every day thinking how, my husband and I spend every day thinking how our actions could impact the health and well-being of these small people who do not have the choice of being vaccinated. And every day my heart breaks for what our children are losing and what our families fear. We don't have good choices and we can't solve these problems. We thought this year would be better. Delta has upended this. We live in one of the most vaccinated counties in the country. I don't know that we have exact data on faculty and staff vaccinations or whether that's protected by HIPAA, but our teachers and our staff tend in general to be more highly vaccinated than the population in general. From what I'm hearing, clinical trials on children under 12 might not even be launched until 2022, which means that in-person instruction would basically be a no-go this year. Not this time last year, but very early into last year, we faced a lot of complaints from parents who not only found remote instruction far inferior to the in-person instruction that students were getting, but actually accused us of deliberately withholding resources from at-home children to benefit children in classrooms. These tough times breed a lot of anxiety and a lot of, I'm going to say it, unfounded and extremely hurtful and inaccurate accusations. I look forward to another year of that because when the pandemic started to unfold, I actually wasn't going to run again, and I felt that I couldn't sit back and turn our children's future over to someone with no experience. This district does its best. We work with Cornell University, Ithaca College, the county health commissioners, the CDC, to do the best for children. This is an ever-changing game. The vast majority of parents whose children experienced remote instruction last year were wildly dissatisfied. The vast majority of teachers who did either remote instruction at the elementary level or hybrid instruction at the secondary level, almost all the ones I talked to said, if this has to go for another year, I will leave the profession. I personally do not have an answer for what will keep children safe beyond masking, distancing, hand washing, more outside instruction, and a really, really high level of vaccination in this county among everyone who can be vaccinated. I hope people are listening. I spent my birthday up on this stage listening to QAnon anti-vaxxers. There weren't very many because this is Ithaca. Again, that's what happens when you try to do public service. I want to leave room for my colleagues to comment, but I would like everyone to know that we are in this together, the administration, the school board, the teachers, the parents, the children. We think about your children every day. We cannot keep them perfectly safe while giving them an education. And giving kids an education remotely is not keeping them perfectly safe. I wish I had an answer. I research constantly to see if anyone's come up with an answer. No one has. No one. China, with draconian measures that no one would accept. I do believe that we in the Northeast and in Tompkins County will do better. I look at the Tompkins County statistics every day, and we've had about a 50% increase in cases since the end of August, or the beginning of August. Our hospitalizations are falling. I'm aware of the GIAC cluster. The public sources I read said that every single kid was asymptomatic. I hope that continues. We will do everything we can to keep your children safe, and we share your concerns. Thank you.
Other comments?
I'll go next. I want to thank you all for speaking. It's Katie and Stephanie, right? I mean, I share your concerns, very much so. I have 3 young children. None of them are eligible to be vaccinated yet. And I am up every night and I read the news. And I, this week, was like dumbstruck by an image of a 3-year-old girl on a BiPAP machine with chest compressions. And she's okay now. But her mother was vaccinated and brought it home to the family. And this poor 3-year-old girl got it. And I read the news and I see that this is on par with measles. I think Carrie Burke's here. She could speak to it better than I can. But again, as a news person, you know, it's got an R0 estimation of 5 to 9, which means every single person who has it can spread it to up to 9 people. And it's in the air longer. And so I get it, because I don't know what I'm going to do personally. I'm scared. I can't do remote learning because I can't for my mental health, and it stinks. And I know a lot of people are concerned, but honestly, not that many people have come to speak. I don't have that many emails hearing this. I've had like maybe 5 or 6. And I think it's, people just don't know what to do. And I do know that I see what Ithaca is doing. And I'm following friends, family in other states in DC, Virginia, Ohio, Florida. And we're doing a lot more here than most other places. And I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for anyone, because I know that no one is happy with anything. But between the masking and the testing and the surveillance, ICSD is doing far more than so many other places I'm seeing. I'm hearing Lily talk about the measures they're taking and the distancing. Nothing is going to be good enough anywhere. No answer. There is no good answer for any of this, right? Those good answers were back when we could have done the right thing a year ago and a year and a half ago, and no one did it. Or this summer when we lifted mask mandates and everyone just went, hey, yay, and then here we are. So I think that nothing is perfect, but I think that we are doing what we can. We are exploring every option. And I think that we are going to see the kids that have already went back to school. We're already seeing what's happening in Georgia. You know, kids are masked and they're getting it anyway. I think in the 2 weeks that we're going to see before school opens, we're going to kind of have something to look at and be even more prepared. So at least we're doing that. Karina, I mean, I share your concerns though with middle school when you have a mix of vaccinated and unvaccinated kids and the same measures can't be happening and what's going to happen. And I imagine we're going to get to more of those questions later. But again, I empathize with you. I'm living this with you. Thank you for speaking. And please tell more people to come to email to speak, because we need to hear these concerns and keep addressing them and work together.
Hi. I want to say thank you to all of you as well, because it is not easy to get up in front of any group of people, especially your board, to speak. I was in that place just last year before I ran for election, and it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking being up here. I'm infuriated, not with our district, with the way the world is right now. I think everybody is. I have a special needs son. He is immune compromised. I live with an 82-year-old father-in-law. I worry that my wife, who is a pre-K teacher, or my son are going to come home and transmit something. Luckily, he's somewhat separate from us, so we can kind of keep it at bay. But it's a fear. You know, I've never been a smoker, but I have scarring on both my lungs. I'm vaccinated. It doesn't mean I can't get COVID, and it terrifies me. So I share with Aaron and Pat the fact that, you know, we're all terrified. We're terrified sitting on this stage. Our teachers are terrified walking in their classrooms. Our parents are terrified for their children, and they're terrified when their children come home because they don't know what they're bringing back. We are doing the best that we can. I do agree, Karina. I think there are some things that you've brought up that I hope our administration looks at, and I believe they will. The suggestions that people bring to us are not just passed over. We do look at them, we do discuss them, we take them very seriously. For instance, I can tell you right now, I do not look at the news. It completely depresses me. I hear of the numbers, I look up the numbers for Tompkins County, I do look at the Ithaca Voice to see that the transmission rates, the positives that have come out of GIAC. But I try to stay away from it because it's the only thing right now that's keeping me above water. I just can't take it all on. So I do want you to know that your voices have been heard, and I hope that we get more people coming in and stating their concerns, but also understanding that we do have limitations. We are working within the guidelines, the state guidelines, the CDC guidelines that we're allowed to work within. But mainly bringing your suggestions to us is key, because there are things we on this stage may not think about as suggestions. And I can tell you, I did not know about just the symptomatic testing, Karina. So I think that's actually a very good idea, that we do more than just symptomatic testing. It's one person's opinion, but it's something that I think should be looked at. So just know that we're in this with you. Nobody up here is against you, and we are taking it all in.
I want to echo everything that Pat, Aaron, and Kelly commented on. Karina, you hit a lot of nails right on the head. I was hoping and praying in June that we would not be here again. I truly was. As a person who spent 3 months of last year going in through my garage and spending time in a single room in the basement to isolate from my family, so I would not bring anything home. We all take this very seriously. And, you know, it's difficult when people come to you and share their concerns and their passionate concerns, especially when it affects their children, to not understand that. And we all do. We all are fully invested in this. And this, unfortunately, as we've all seen throughout this time, is a painful process, you know, and there's no light switch system we can put in place. But there are some things we can definitely put in place. And Kelly hit the nail on the head, and she said that we do review this. We see what we can put in place and how we can implement these changes, and we need to have these conversations. But I hear your passion. I hear your concerns. I always get fearful when things are framed as accusations, because no one sitting up here is in any way, shape, or form trying to do harm to anyone. And we're racking our brains on how do we implement things in the best interest of the child, and also with the fear of understanding that, you know, what's going to happen next. We see the future, and it's fearful, you know, and having to sit at this table and understand that is very scary. I have a grandchild within the school district, and I also have my in-laws that live with me, you know, they're in good health, but they're up there in age. So trying to balance this life and keep everyone safe and hope to keep everyone safe is extremely concerning. It's difficult to sit up here to look at you and say, I don't know what to tell you. You know, we are working through this process, and we're trying to put systems in place, you know, as best as we possibly can. And it's also extremely frustrating because we were here last year, you know. And I always say this, I talk to folks, I know folks in several different school districts. We are not alone. You know, they are racking their brains, and they are fearful as well. I don't want to apologize, but I do want you to understand that this thing it's big, and we're all grappling with it.
I'll be brief. I'm going to repeat some things I said last week, that this is a very rapidly changing situation. And so a number of the issues that people brought up, I think things have shifted since last week, and our administrative team is going to be giving us an update, which the board hasn't yet gotten. We'll be getting it tonight, about what's happening with testing. One of the biggest changes that happened is that, you know, less than 24 hours ago, we got a new governor. And the new governor is saying she's going to make a mask mandate. She is talking about a mandate for vaccines for teachers. So this is changing very, very quickly. And it's not really something that we can act on alone. And, you know, in terms of other places where there's vaccine mandates, outside of New York City, I don't believe there's a single district in New York State that has mandated a vaccine, because we have particular issues in New York State. In addition, the New York City mandate is being challenged in court. It's being challenged by unions. So these are the kinds of things that the Ithaca City School District really can't do alone. It looks like our new governor is going to try to provide robust leadership on these issues, but it is changing hourly. So that's all I can say. You know, as everybody else on the board has said, we share these concerns. We think about it all the time. I read the news all the time to find out what's happening locally, what's happening nationwide. And our administrators, they're working 24/7 to try to keep up with the changes.
Rob, I would just like to add one comment or a series of comments that's specific to the adoption of Canvas. The board is not asked to review and approve educational software of this kind, and so the switch from school tool to Canvas, I do not believe was intended to facilitate remote instruction. My understanding is that it was adopted to facilitate better instruction across all types of education. Cornell has used Canvas for years now. Ithaca College has changed from Sakai to Canvas this year, and I've spent the last month or so listening to my husband walk around the house and grumble about having to learn a new system and have to learn it a week before school starts, and that is obviously less than ideal. But my understanding is that institutions adopt Canvas because it has multiple capabilities in areas that other software doesn't. I would actually like to ask our administrative team to address the decision to Canvas. And address your points, because I can't address your specific points. And I would really like to hear some of our administrative team. Did instructional delivery capabilities exist through school tool? I would assume that if hybrid or remote had to occur, that we would go back to that. I don't know of anything other than, I don't know of any instructional platform that has been created to specifically facilitate remote delivery. People are still going to use Zoom. And I wish I'd bought stock in Zoom, but I didn't know.
Wait, I'm going to ask a follow-up then. Catherine, so the concerns are that secondary teachers, it's not, right now, they're going to be learning in school. But so your concern is that if something happens, they have to go remote, Canvas is not doable, is that?
So if everyone were remote, we could get into a meet, deliver our instruction to all of our students uniformly in one format. If everyone's in the classroom, we can deliver our instruction face-to-face in the classroom. The model for remote students currently, and that would be the synchronous instruction. It could happen in person, face-to-face, all through a Google Meet, or like we did last year and was horrible, through the Google Meet with students in the classroom. So that would be the synchronous instruction. The current model for remote students is that they will get assignments, but they will not receive synchronous instruction because we're not doing the hybrid model. So it's essentially, the plan is similar to the way students who were on extended absences for suspensions or medical leaves before COVID received their instruction. They got a packet of work and 2 hours a day with a district appointed tutor, and that was how they learned. which for 2 days, 3 days makes sense. For 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, we as secondary educators are incredibly concerned at the loss of instruction that our students will have, that they will not be able to actually do the work that we assign them because they won't receive the learning that it takes to be able to do the work. So it's not the platform that we worry about, it's the lack of instruction. It's lack of synchronous instruction.
May I ask a question to that up? Sorry. What are you suggesting?
If we had the staff for an academy so that those students could receive actual instruction, if we could take advantage of one of the academies that, say, like the Suffolk County BOCES is offering, or the Owego Appalachian is now offering one, if there was some kind of digital academy that students could attend, if we had enough staff to teach remote courses, which we know that there's a staffing shortage and we're struggling to staff our in-person instruction, I do not feel that we could say offer everyone a 6th class or extra pay because we are already so tapped out that that's not really an option. So it really needs to be, the suggestions need to be finding a way for students who are on extended leaves to actually receive instruction from someone who's designing their learning, not just a district appointed tutor who's trying to support them through the work that they're assigned by their teachers. Does that help?
Yes, I'm sure we're going to hear more from our
Right.
admin team
We will
very
get
shortly
to-
about,
We get
you know,
we
where
will get
we
to
are
our-
at with any of these approaches.
Right, like I said, we surveyed all our members and I'm just bringing you all of the questions, so thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you all for speaking tonight, and we'll hear from folks again. Moira, you mentioned it. We have a new governor. We're not quite sure where that will take us. Until such time as the new governor declares a state of emergency in New York State and tells everyone they have to stay home, shut down all businesses, and shut down Wegmans, shut down everything, we have an obligation to have schools open. We will be open. We will have students in the classroom. We've talked in the past about the steps and protocols that we're going through to make sure that our students are safe and staff are safe. We're going to talk about that again in a few minutes, and we're going to review the fall, and we're going to review a few more things. But we will, we have a job to do. We have an obligation to teach and educate all the kids in this community, which is what we always do. That is our obligation. That is our sole mission of this board. And we will keep fighting through, and we will continue to lead. I think you already heard that we are already doing much that is not being done in other districts, and we will continue to lead, to be open, and to be open 5 days a week, and be open with kids in the classroom. And again, unless we have a state of emergency and it says that you will shut down this district will be open, and there will be, we will be teaching kids. And so that's what we will do. Dr. Brown, we're going to hear more in just a minute. And I suggest, and Carrie Burke's here, and we have Lily, et cetera. We'll be talking about what return to school looks like again. But if we just get through the consent agenda, which it just has pretty minimal items, we can go ahead and get on with the agenda. So I entertain any motions for the consent, and then we answer any questions about it.
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Maura. Any questions? I would just highlight, what goes around comes around, Amanda. We're finally seeing something about a smart bond on our agenda. I thought this was years ago, years in the making. Is that? Just so we can fill folks in, we talk about what we're going to do with some of the smart bond money before we get into other items.
Right, so thank you, everybody. I'm Amanda Verb, I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the district. One of the projects that's still in existence is that smart bond work. We still have an area of the website, if you're wondering about what that is. Many years ago, the governor essentially released allocations to every school district in the state that you can apply to be reimbursed for work that you're doing. They fall under a number of categories. Here in Ithaca, based on some feedback sessions that we had, which were required to receive those grants and spend those grants, we decided that infrastructure around technology was really our focus. You're going to see that sometimes these projects, they do take multiple years. This is a funding stream that is there until we spend it and get reimbursed for all of it. Due to school closures and due to COVID, the Smart Bond work sort of was put on pause for a bit. And as we, are working through the capital project and looking at our buildings, we try to utilize all of the funding streams available to us. And the Smart Bond is one of them for very particular reasons. And so what you're seeing in the consent agenda is essentially trying to address some of the gaps from the phase 1 that we got approved at the state level in terms of key swipes for remote entries, enhancing access to a few more areas in the building in terms of allowing traffic flow back into the building, especially when we want to try to separate young people and use multiple entries and exits into the playground, from the playground, lunchtime, all of that. And then also some cameras, because we know that as kids spread out and they're using the hallways more often, and we're trying to, be creative around lunch, there are some zones in buildings that actually didn't have, in secondary only, some internal cameras and then external cameras for all of the buildings K through 12. So all you're seeing is just work that we've already had approved, and this is just sort of a couple of remaining lingering items. We are also working with our administrators to identify the remainder of the funds that's left in what we would call phase 2 of the Smart Bond. We're not there yet, and we're not asking to hold a meeting yet or a town hall and then post up to the website. This is really about phase 1 and closing out that element of the project.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're very welcome.
It's been years,
It's good to revisit. It's good to revisit.
I was thinking they should rename the Smart Bond, but it's okay. But at least we're going to get some more work done, right?
Correct.
Excellent. Thanks. Anything else on the consent? Thanks for the update, Amanda. Are we good? Move, seconded, all in favor? That's everyone. Thank you all. Thank you all for the discussion before, and we're going to really carry that through. And Dr. Brown, we're up to you, and then let's move on.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Ainsley. I wish to use this the superintendent's business to transition us to the first item, because much of what I was going to share we can capture as part of that section and the next. I'm going to invite our point person for COVID-19, and Carrie Burke can come up a little closer if she wishes as well. Lily Talcott and Carrie Burke. And while they're transitioning up, I wish to say that our decisions and our leadership has been informed by data, science, and a process. And that's been the case for the last 18 months now. And admittedly, and I've said this before, I can't think of the last time I made a good decision. And I would say the same for leadership, because most of the decisions we are making, which are many each and every day, are choosing between bad and worse. To require everyone in our school district to wear a mask at all times is not a good decision. It's a decision, knowing that wearing a mask impacts everything from our instructional process to the comfort of our young people and adults. But we've made it. And I know we've been out on an island at times, and many of our colleagues have been angry with us for making that decision. Offering a virtual opportunity for young people who are medically fragile was a decision. Not one that we like, because I would love to have young people in our spaces, but yet another decision that was shunned by our colleagues, because most are not offering that type of an option. So yeah, I will say that we're making decisions each and every day, and they're tough. I can't think of anyone that has been good. And our leadership has been about how do we navigate this very complex time with the shifting data and the shifting guidance. But please know that everything we're doing has been informed by that guidance and by a process, even with our instructional delivery, and we're going to talk about our instructional delivery model at the secondary and at the elementary level. And I'm not proud to say up here that our secondary offering for some young people who cannot come into our buildings is going to be done through an asynchronous model using Canvas. That is a decision that was informed by a process that included many educators that began last spring. Yes, that is a decision we've made, but am I happy about it? No. And I wish I could stand down there and yell at the board and the superintendent and say, how in the world we think we're going to do that for a long time? But that is a decision we've made, and it's one that we're going to make the most of, the best of, in partnership with our young people. But again, informed by data, science, and a process. So again, we've invited Ms. Talcott and Ms. Burkup to share some additional details, and we'll go through the frequently asked questions because our website is updated daily as we make these decisions with where we are at the moment. And as of right now at 6:40 something, we're here to share with you where we are at this moment as far as reopening for the upcoming academic school year. Ms. Talcott and Ms. Burke, if y'all want to come up and let's walk through those frequently asked questions and any other questions that are on the hearts and minds of our board members.
And certainly questions that have been risen tonight as well, right? Which I'm sure you're hearing daily.
Absolutely, yes. Good evening. Good to see everyone. Good to see the folks who spoke this evening. Thank you so much. I want to start by echoing Dr. Brown. Indeed, data, experts, and a process has been much of how we've thought about these last 18 months, right? It's really informed everything we do. So I just want to make sure that everybody in our community knows that we do have an updated website now. And as Dr. Brown said, we update it pretty regularly. So if you go to Reopen ICSD, that's still where we're holding things. And so if you click right on that first link that says Reopen ICSD, you'll always see the most up-to-date announcements, so letters from Dr. Brown, particular announcements regarding mask shifts, such as Friday evening. You'll see all of those in order. But then really key probably is the fall 2021 learning. And that involves a number of frequently asked questions, or Tricia, you can click on this one, either one. It's fine. And so you'll see there's a series of questions about in-person learning. There's a series of questions about non-in-person learning or remote learning. Many of these, as Dr. Brown indicated, were informed not only by the CDC, but also processed through the Fall 2021 Learning Models Committee that was comprised of a number of educators at both the elementary and secondary level. So we had teachers, we had education support professionals, where we designed what that non-in-person or that remote learning would look like. I think we presented in June. So along with David Isley, Margot Deverin, and Rebecca Porras, we all presented and talked a little bit about some of these as well in terms of the learning options. And there's more to discuss. So we're going to be meeting, I think, I put another time out there, Catherine, so maybe tomorrow instead of Thursday. But I want to let folks know that these are updated pretty regularly. We also have received questions from our staff. So if you go down a little further, you'll see that there are some new questions that have to do with particular types of masks and how staff can request those, et cetera. And so if you really use this as a landing page, and as folks ask us questions, we put them in here, we update them. We just think it's useful to have that as a live, as a relatively live, relatively interactive in some ways, experience as we're updating. So I did want to start with that. I also wanted to just remind families that the application process for non-in-person, it ends on the 26th. So we do need those applications in by that time. If you're having any trouble with it, please feel free to call my office, 607-274-2134. If you don't have access to the internet, absolutely, we're happy to help you as well. I can tell the community that right now we have very limited numbers of applications currently. And I don't, it's likely that more will come in, right, before Thursday, the 26th, but did want to make sure that folks did know that. Trisha, I think you can stop sharing. Just wanted to make sure people knew that. And then I'm happy to talk a little bit more. We wanted to actually be pretty flexible this evening, knowing that folks would come with questions and knowing that the board would come with questions. So I wanted to make sure folks understood what was happening here at the, in terms of our website, and then talk a little bit in response to some of the things that have come up this evening. So in terms of remote learning, I'm just gonna move over this way so I can kind of talk to everybody a little better. In terms of remote learning, as I mentioned, the learning models for the fall committee really designed this overview for what we were going to be expecting. So what it might look like at the secondary level, what it might look like at the elementary level. In the meantime, I will tell you that we have also explored and engaged with a number of BOCES throughout the state. And their time stamp is typically the end of, most of them are the end of this week or the middle of next week. They need to get all of the applications from their component districts before they will accept applications from districts outside of their BOCES. So TST BOCES is not offering a remote option, right? There's no COSER that we can buy into, which is that shared cost for our local BOCES, but there are for other ones. And so we've been working closely actually with our BOCES to inquire about each of those. So they've got, so they're waiting, so like the Suffolk County BOCES, et cetera, they're waiting to hear from their component districts that are in their region first, and then we'll open it up. Additionally, we've heard from some other BOCES that they're no longer offering any more spots because they're experiencing teacher shortages. So they don't have the staffing to do it. So that's where we are in relationship to that, but we have continued to keep in contact with them as a possibility, knowing that we have a responsibility to know what all of the options really are for our community and for our kiddos and families. I think it's also important to note that in terms of Canvas and really what that is, Pat, your question was great, and Catherine knows oodles more about Canvas than I do. I am setting up a class currently in Canvas, and it's actually relatively intuitive, which is great. Yeah, right, you have to play around. That's right, right. In terms of like posting announcements, posting assignments, and then how I want people to reply to those assignments or turn in those assignments. So I might assign, kids could do a video response, they could attach a Google Doc, they could insert a text box, et cetera. So those might be options. And really, Canvas is a learning management system to allow us to, we adopted last year, knowing that we would be remote again, that allowed us to have just a more comprehensive and systematic approach to distance learning, right? Distance learning and concurrent or hybrid learning, right? So we were using Google Classroom before, but I would have to, say we taught in the same building, I would have to make you a co-teacher in order for you to see anything in there, right? Whereas with Canvas, I might be an administrator and able to see lots of classes, and I can also post things to the Commons, Canvas Commons, which can be helpful as well. I don't know how much you use that, Catherine, but okay, all right. I've checked out some of the things on Canvas Commons. It allows collaboration among classes in really different ways, right? That we weren't able to do through Google Classroom. It allows for announcements. It allows families and tutors to be observers, et cetera. And in some ways, it's like a one-stop shop, shopping for for learning for kiddos, right? In terms of what's next and really how we utilize it, thinking about the fall, I think, we're in ongoing conversations. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be meeting later this week with ITA leadership, and we've continued to stay in contact with, and I think have a really good, productive relationship with ITA leadership in order to figure out those next steps. I did want to talk a little bit about testing, screening testing, or the CDC now calls it screening testing. Last year we called it surveillance testing, but the CDC has kind of shifted that language over. It's important to note that the CDC recognizes screening testing. That would be screening asymptomatic, unvaccinated individuals. That's really what they're talking about here, at particular levels of community spread, right? And so that chart is on our website. They really have two measures that the CDC recommends. Our state, I would say, is more conservative in terms of what, where we fall in terms of those levels. Carrie, do you want to talk a little bit about what that may begin to look like and what some of the possibilities are there?
Happy to. Good evening. Happy to be here in front of you. So the conversation around testing has evolved over time. I think when we learned that federal dollars would be made available to school districts for testing, this was in early June, where we all recognized that conditions around COVID were changing. And so the conversation was originally around symptomatic testing. We recognized that some students had difficulty accessing testing in a timely fashion. The hours and the availability of various testing sites in the community were not conducive for families. And so the thought was to engage in sampling students before they're dismissed from school, if they become unwell at school. And that way we would be able to provide them access to results in a timely fashion. Some kids were out for days or even longer because of access concerns. As things have evolved this summer, of course, we are now looking to implement surveillance testing in addition to symptomatic testing. And so those conversations with Cayuga Medical Center are ongoing. We're working through the logistics and details, but our intentions are to offer both surveillance testing and symptomatic testing at the school site, through the school site.
Well, Carrie, just to hopefully clarify a bit, we certainly were testing within elementary schools. Dr. Brown, we witnessed that, right, at Cayuga Heights, et cetera. And that was done on a routine basis. In my work, unvaccinated adults have to be tested every 72 hours, right? So are we doing anything that way and one more, is Cornell doing the extensive testing that they did last year? I know all students have to be vaccinated when they're back. Are they still testing for their community as well?
They are. My current understanding, and if someone has different or more current information, is they are planning to test unvaccinated persons twice a week, and they're starting the school year with testing vaccinated people once a week. Again, with concerns around the Delta variant, of course, people traveling from different locations across the country and the world to attend Cornell, I think they're looking to ramp up testing and take a robust approach. We similarly are looking to, along surveillance, we're having conversations about increasing our sample size. So for example, in the spring, we are testing 20% of consented students over a 2-week period. We're wondering if we could do that figure weekly or even more. And a lot of it is around the details and logistics of collecting those samples and getting them to the lab and all that's involved with that. But so we're working through those.
And what's the vision for this fall, just to be clear on testing, surveillance testing?
Testing is one of those additional and recommended strategies for schools. It helps to break up chains of transmission, to uncover cases that might not otherwise be identified because persons are asymptomatic carriers. And it also allows us to respond very quickly when a positive is identified to ensure that we're mitigating any risk to others in the building.
So we will continue to do that. Right. I was just to be clear for folks. And
yes, thank you.
We've done this. we had the systems in place. It's not, we don't have to reinvent anything. We are going to continue a process that we already have in place, and we'll continue it in the fall.
If anything, it'll be better to the extent that the testing that we'll be utilizing for this school year is PCR testing, so it's molecular or diagnostic testing, so the accuracy is going to be, it's what's considered the gold standard, whereas in the spring, we're using antigen tests, which are very good and provide rapid results, but always required a confirmation test.
No, I appreciate that, Carrie. It's just important to make that clear for folks.
No, I'm glad you asked.
And
Thank
certainly
you.
there's no reason not to, right? There's absolutely no reason not to. And information data is always better. So I appreciate it.
Carrie, to be clear, you're also testing vaccinated people as well?
So with any testing program, I think the priorities are for those who are unvaccinated, but if vaccinated individuals want to opt into it, we wouldn't deny them the opportunity to be tested.
Right, because I mean, they can still transmit, and that is a fear as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My understanding is that Cornell will be testing a representative sample of vaccinated individuals, not every vaccinated individual, but they are concerned about transmission through vaccination. But the other pillar of what made them so successful last year was a very efficient contact tracing system. Can you talk about what the district is doing in that direction, how we're handling contact tracing?
Yeah, most certainly. In last year, provided us a number of opportunities to work through that process and refine it further. It often depends on where the confirmed case, the report originates. So we've had, with modern technology and people being able to access results through portals, at times we were getting reports of positive cases from family members themselves. We always confirm those with the health department, and alternatively, other times the health department was coming to us to notify us of a positive. When we are notified, we work very quickly to engage with the administrator in the building and any of those staff who may have been exposed to ensure that they're aware of their potential exposure and to dismiss them from the building. And we move to then dismiss any students who have been identified as close contacts.
Thank you.
And that process is outlined in our FAQs as well, if you would like to know in further depth what that looks like.
Other questions? One up here. Well, that's, can we talk for a minute about just, Dr. Brown, our full intent is that students will be back 5 days a week in person, and we have the capabilities to do that. We have the space to do that. Yes, cafeterias will look differently. They won't be used as much. Elementary basically going to be, they ate in their classrooms quite a bit, right? So, and cohorting at the middle school level, I mean, certainly that is a priority. Lily, you want to talk?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about both of those. So in terms of lunch, Dan Bryman, our administration officer, and all of our wonderful principals and associate principals, we've been meeting since May to really go through all of the spaces and ensure that there is enough space for 6 feet of distance while folks are eating. It is also important to note that we are one of the only school districts in the region that is spacing their children 6 feet for eating. Most others are doing 3 feet. So because that was what they were capable of doing. So we're ensuring 6 feet. Right now, what we're doing is we're using the large spaces that we have. So at elementary, I think last board meeting, maybe I talked about an example. I'll talk about another example, and one at Caroline. So at Caroline, the cafeteria fits X number of students, right? We've spaced it all out. We've made sure that it works for 6 feet of physical distance, and any classes that go above that number, there'll be a small portion of those students who then would engage just in a classroom, right? So we're trying to be as flexible as possible, but as I said, cohorting at, as I've I've mentioned before, cohorting at elementary is really around the whole grade level as opposed to by class right now. And that's in part because of some of the staffing challenges that we found. And we knew that there were some teachers who would, if we didn't have coverage, I actually covered lunch and recess quite a bit, as did everyone else in this room last year as well, which was actually really fun, but because it was all hands on deck, right? But cohorting by the grade level allows us to be a little more flexible with our staffing. So we wouldn't need, if we had 4 sections of 3rd grade, say at a given school, we wouldn't need 4 different individuals in order to supervise those students and support them during their mealtime. And instead, we can have fewer staff supporting more students at the same time. And then in terms of cohorting at the middle schools, so last year, you may have been familiar with the gold cohort, the red cohort, the blue cohort, et cetera. There were particular cohorts that would come during certain days of the week, right? Because we have that hybrid or concurrent schedule. This year, we don't have that hybrid or concurrent schedule, right? So we continue to have teams, right? As much as possible. So at DeWitt, I may be on Team A, which is, I work primarily with these teachers, right? But that doesn't apply to things like practical arts and physical education, et cetera. And so I think it's important to note that as a reality, right? There's this cohort by group in general, 2 particular groups, and because we only have one wonderful art teacher at DeWitt, all of the students engaged with that art teacher during 10-week increments. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Lily. Other topics, questions?
Actually, just have one question about the lunches. So are the pre-Ks being pulled out and put in a cafeteria, or have we done the spacing in those classrooms since they usually eat their lunches in their classrooms?
That's a great question, Kelly. So for pre-K, particularly because of the Head Start regulations, Head Start requires, it's a federal program, great program. We're really appreciative of our partnership with TC Action around that. It does require what's called a family style meal, right? So kids are actually learning a great number of social skills and fine motor skills by engaging in that way in the classroom. And so that's how we've typically done it. And this year, yes, we actually have Deb Jordan, who's our wonderful new educator for inclusion, who's supporting pre-K. We've worked with her, we've worked with the building leaders to look at what the capacity and support is for our youngest learners there. By each building, I can get you specifics in terms of what their specific plans are. I'd be happy to email that out to you, or I can even put it in the FAQ as well.
That'd be great, thanks.
Okay.
There was a reference to possible custodial shortage that might impact our cleaning protocols. So where do we stand with that?
Thanks. So all of the vacancies that we have are listed on our website, right? So those are on the Ithaca City School District website currently. So if you go to, at the top, if you go to departments and click on human resources, then you can see employment opportunities. And that's where you're going to find all of the vacancies that are listed throughout the school district. This summer, we did a few things. So one, we moved some custodial staff around in order to meet the summer cleaning and disinfecting needs, right, for the summer. We also had a great number of summer programs that the wonderful Mary Grover is going to talk about in just a little bit. And so that meant that we had to make some adjustments in terms of folks. We were able to hire, and Bob Van Kuren, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 2 additional folks this summer in order to support as well. Thank you. Great, I did get that right. So the cleaning protocols that take place, there's particular daily protocols. Those are all listed on our FAQs. And there are these like standard operating procedures, right, that are listed around what you do first and then what you do, et cetera, right? You clean first and then you disinfect. In terms of those high touch surfaces, right, the CDC still has a pretty clear outline in terms of how you're supposed to clean and disinfect and what that's supposed to look like. I will say that it is less stringent than it used to be because of the research around what's called fomite particles, right? Those particles that land on surfaces of COVID-19 and the extremely limited transmission that occurs from those fomite particles then to human transmission and then contracting actual COVID-19. So we have seen a shift in terms of some of those protocols. In terms of staffing, we're constantly looking and doing a great number of things. I would say, I'm pretty sure that's one of our amazing HR people in the back there who's supporting us, Ladira Velasquez, who has been trying to help us with recruiting as well. We've gone to job fairs, et cetera, to really try to get as many custodians as possible. And then we also offer overtime. So we've noticed that there's been a real increase in terms of overtime. So we might have a custodian who works until 2 o'clock, and then we offer them additional overtime in order to stay if we're, say, down some other folks. So Moira, that was a very long answer for we are finding ways to make it happen. And there have been some adjustments in terms of the requirements for cleaning and disinfecting.
I only see one opening for a custodian on the list.
That may be the case currently. Yep, okay.
And well, just to follow up on staffing, Dr. Brown, I believe we're still looking at the next Tuesday and the Tuesday after that for board members. I think that went out. We will be meeting either in a short meeting or we'll continue to have discussions about reopening, but every Tuesday until we open, we will meet. And if you have someone that you need to hire, there will be 5 board members or more here to have a quorum, and it will be at 6 o'clock. And obviously we'll know more as we get to our next week, but board members will be here. If you need something done, we will vote on it. So we will be here, and we'll make that happen. So do not wait to hire, let's put it that way. So as you know, and the request was, can we keep time open to do that? And obviously we will be here to get that one last custodian and that next teacher or aide, or as we hire as we move into the school year.
I have a question. So going back to unvaccinated children who might not have a medical need, I was just reviewing the website while we're chatting, and it's a hard no that they cannot if there's not a medical reason. But I'm wondering if we've considered sending out a survey similar to what Lansing set out. A couple parents forwarded me a survey Lansing set out to gauge what parents feel, to see how many parents would opt to have their child do remote learning, given that you just stated that you haven't gotten many applications yet, even though the deadline hasn't hit. Is there any consideration to test the waters to see if we can accommodate those who just want to keep their children home?
Yes, we've talked about this, and we are looking to open up that option for families, but we would also prioritize those spots similarly to what we did last year. Some will have some significant needs, but may not qualify medically. And we would want to prioritize them more so than someone who just wishes to try the beginning of the year out virtually. So yes, we are looking at that option, and hopefully we can offer it to a limited number of families.
Other questions? I believe Mary's going to come up and talk about summer programs, but anything else right now? Because we know things will undoubtedly change, but And Lily, it could always change for the better, you know, it could get better.
That would be nice.
I would love that, Rob. Be great.
We are always optimists, pessimistic optimists. That's what they used to call farmers back in the day. Anything else for Kelly? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have, so I'm going to go back to the custodial. It seems like we're more shorthanded on custodians than just needing one. And maybe I'm wrong, but I am getting several emails of concern, both from parents who have kids in camps and teachers. I understand we have to pull custodians out of buildings and we go in groups to go clean certain buildings to try and get ready for the school year. And right now that's leaving some buildings without a custodian on some days. That's understandable to an extent, but I know there's at least one school that is very shorthanded on custodians and can't seem to retain custodians in that school for some reason. So I'm just curious, one, I guess, how we only have one opening. And again, you could speak to, I could be completely wrong and feel free to tell me if I am. But do we do anything, and this is just simply me not knowing the HR process and how we work with community agencies as well. Do we post anything through temp agencies? Like, do we do temp custodians at all, like in times like this, where we could pull in more people through staffing agencies to get our buildings cleaned and not leave schools without a custodian for a day where there may be an emergency while we're pulled into other buildings?
I'm going to invite Bob Van Kuren up to talk just a little bit more, just because he's more knowledgeable about all of that entire process. Although I know some of it, I want to make sure I know he has all of the details.
It's good to get up and walk around, Bob, once in a while.
Yeah, I never get up to say hello. Hello, everybody. Bob Van Kuren, I work in human resources, for those that don't know me in the audience. First things first, we will have enough custodial to conduct the COVID cleanings that we have since March 18th, or March 13th, excuse me. That means even if we have to pull folks from grounds crew, from other areas of facilities to make it happen, we don't anticipate needing to do that, but if that has to happen, we certainly could do that. It might mean that the weeds grow even longer than they are right now, but we have enough staff currently available to do everything we need to do. We also have roving custodians that we use, and Kelly, you're exactly right. At this time of the year, custodial is essentially a team effort, and they go from building to building to do the waxing of the floors and as a team get the building ready, especially those that have been used for summer school activities. And so I think what some people are seeing now, especially in the after-school programs, is what the custodian they've seen there for most of the summer is now not really available. And I think that's partly what's happening in terms of this lack of custodians. What's the other question? Oh, temp agencies. Because we're a unionized shop, we don't typically use temp agencies. I know one other thing we're going to do, we've talked to the union about this, is open up overtime for custodial work to other parts of the union. So we could have food service workers, for example, after their shift, if they want to do custodial work and earn some overtime. We're working out the final details of that. So I'm really confident we will be able to deliver really solid custodial services day one.
Okay.
The other thing too, right at the moment there, I know a few custodians and grounds folks who are on vacation. They needed to take a vacation just like everybody during the summer.
I don't get
too.
to get a vacation.
Sorry.
Thank you, folks. Anything else right now? We good? And so let's, Dr. Brown, we want to talk about summer
It
programming?
would be awesome to do so.
There you go.
Let's go, but please, come on up.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I feel a real sense of privilege that I get to be the one to talk about our summer programming, because it was a huge reflection on a large number of people collaborating together to expand our programming significantly. So this year, our summer programming was really working and hoping to cultivate connections with students and bring students together. And Trish, next slide, please. We were able to expand our summer programming. 1 out of every 5 of our students participated in either Summer Academy, LACS, Summer Connection, or BOCES Regional Summer School, Project Innovation, our inclusive pre-K summer programming. We also offered the Algebra Companion course. Caroline Wilderness Performance Academy continues. Additional programming that wasn't students coming to a venue included the Bookmobile, which went to West Village, Enfield, and Caroline Elementary Schools throughout the week, in partnership with our food service program, so students could have access to books and food. Next slide, Tricia. So I want to drill down a little bit on Project Innovation, which is Project Innovation centers our farm-to-table curriculum and grant. And when we started Project Innovation 4 years ago, we had roughly 90 students. This year we had 333. So expanding that program really allows us to have a heterogeneous grouping of students. And I really want to thank Eileen Granger, Julie Humble, and Brick Burnett, who did a lot to support that program this year. That's a significant expansion of the program. So their theme was cultivating love. How do we cultivate love for ourselves, for those around us, and for our environment? So we have some images of children checking in using the mood meter, building garden beds that are going to be placed in their schools, their home schools. This took place at Bell Sherman. We had a number of community partnerships, one being Circus Culture, and you'll see in the bottom frame a student teaching juggling to middle school students, teaching juggling to other students as part of a celebration of learning that the middle school students hosted. Next slide, Tricia. So to have this type of expansive programming, we really lean heavily on you. Thank you for all of your support. Parents sharing their children with us, and caregivers, the students, our educators, their commitment to creating innovative opportunities and welcoming students back was joyful. You could walk into Bell Sherman, you could walk into Caroline Elementary School, you could walk into BOCES Regional School and see joy and feel joy. And I'm really grateful to the transportation department, the technology department. You were talking about facilities, shifting furniture and making sure students have what they need, getting the number of folks hired and on payroll for this extended assignment work in the summer. The Human Resources Department was exceptional, as well as the business office. And then the transportation of this many students across this many sites was extensive and appreciated. So I want to make sure we thank all of those departments for this summer. And I want to open it up to your questions as well.
Mary, could you just briefly give a description of the Summer Academy and the LACS Connections program?
Yeah, absolutely. So LACS Connect, that was a 6th through 12th grade program where students could come connect with students, and they continued their home-based model. So there were smaller cohorts of students working on projects from the school year that they wanted to offer extensions with. At the center was really building relationships and with students and connecting with them. The Summer Academy, we had roughly 170 high school students who accrued 168 credits. So that's a significant expansion of that program. And that was, again, really, I really want to thank the Ithaca High School teachers who were facilitating the coursework. So by thinking creatively and continuing a pilot that wasn't attendance-based, it had flexibility. So there was time for students to work on the content asynchronously and then come for in-person office hour check-ins at Summer Academy. So we were meeting the needs of students if they had a summer job or other responsibilities at home. There were both evening check-in times and times during the school day that they could come in. And that separating ourselves from it's got to be this time, and if you miss a class, then you're no longer able to participate, was, I think, really important for students this summer who are doing all kinds of things.
I can say I'm extremely grateful for the LACS program this summer. It was a wonderful experience for my son, and we were grateful to have him out of the house. But you guys did some extraordinary things. They went mini golfing. They had a couple days at Cass Park, and it was just phenomenal as far as socially, at least for our son. It was great for him to keep those connections.
It's wonderful.
Other questions? We talked about summer programs a little bit, just as at our last meeting, just talking about they were just wrapping up, they have just wrapped up, right? And number of kids and staff interacting all summer as we're moving into fall, and kids in buildings, and basically how successful it was, and just on all levels. And the sheer number was, as you say, 1 out of 5, basically. Altogether, it's got to be 1,000 kids in that range.
Close, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That we're learning together and learning with a teacher with them, either indoors, outdoors, or wherever they were. And that's the vision, Dr. Brown, of what we hope to see in a few weeks. So that's, and with all the other methods of keeping everyone safe, but the priority is certainly trying to replicate the visions we just saw for all the kids. And so that's our challenge. It's not easy, but it is critical that the kids be able to experience what all the kids get to be able to experience what those 1,000 children were able to do. Other,
Well, looking at this and really understanding the need for it for our children, but also recognizing the movement of the resources and making this happen during these times. And I don't want to minimize one to focus on the other, but that's what comes to mind, especially as we have these conversations, because the need for the children doesn't end during these times. And when we talked about transportation and technology and these resources making this happen, if you could, one, speak to the process or the success with that. And I hate to put you on the spot in that way, but that's what stands out to me.
Yeah. No, I think one important piece is the summer programming. It's really a time that allows for us to connect with students, but also one thing that feedback I received directly from teachers at Project Innovation is to have time to try things and pilot resources that they hope to use. So we can get through, as we're purchasing materials for the school year, there's nothing that says you can't use those in the summer too. And so when we're thinking about resources, what do we have and how can we extend their use throughout the school year, including the summer? What do we do in the summer that historically hasn't worked that we can stop doing? And then what can we do in place of that? So sometimes the resources, the cost, if you will, doesn't increase, but it's just a shifting of our resources to match our priorities. So the Farm to Table grant is one example. That grant really allowed us to expand project innovation by thinking about those resources and how we could blend that our goals to have an inclusive summer program that was project-based with a program that was a standalone prior to this year. And transportation, moving students, there are some costs to your question that may increase that we can't shift. And I would say transportation is, if we need more buses, we need more buses.
And quite honestly, I wasn't even thinking about the cost aspect as more the physical demand and capacity aspect of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know that's always a challenge when you talk the numbers of children participating. It's not small numbers.
Yeah.
It's more a statement than a question. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris is doing Eldred now this week.
Wow. Okay.
Anything else for Mary before we let her go? We good?
Thank you, Ms. Grover.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to, the two leaders, the co-principals.
Yes, Eileen and
outstanding, plus the others that you mentioned. Certainly appreciate their efforts and really came together and did a great job. So,
They certainly did. Truly grateful. Thank you.
thanks, Mary. Just to finish up, Dr. Brown, apparently, as of right now, there are sports. We will have sports this fall and this winter and next spring, because it will happen. And because Ithaca City School District offers sports that others do not, there's surrounding districts that would like an opportunity for a few of their kids to participate. So the first is, always, we are a hockey town, and there's a young person in Lansing that wants to be able to play hockey, girls hockey. So, so that is the merger. You can see the item there, and then there's one for wrestling, but let's do one at a time.
Before we do that, could I just ask a general question? Because I'm looking at the merger proposals, and the wrestling proposal specifically states that this is for one young person in Trumansburg who desperately wants to wrestle. The Lansing proposal does not specify the number of people who want to participate. It just says that no ICSD students will be displaced due to this merger. I'm just going to bring up the general question that I always do, because it's not so much that someone's going to be thrown off the team as that, say, for ice hockey or hockey, a coveted position such as the goalie might be at stake. For wrestling,
We've been there, done that. Yeah.
there are
weight classes,
specific
yeah.
weight classes, yes.
Yeah.
I am aware of this, Rob. In former life, I was a scorekeeper for the varsity wrestling team,
Yes, yes.
which may surprise some
And
people.
you were an excellent scorekeeper, Pat, I'm sure, right? So,
I was very precise and could add up numbers very quickly, yes.
but as,
So if
Right.
I don't see Samantha here, but if someone could address just.
Thank you for the athletic question, Dr. Wazaloo. It is my understanding that this is not a goalie and it's not a particular position, and it's only one, maybe two particular players. That's my understanding. I can verify that, but I don't think it'll be an issue.
And typically, certainly in the last few years, the girls' hockey team has needed numbers.
It's
So
needed numbers, yes.
to get have an adequate practice, much less games. And so I think that's, Samantha certainly has signed off on it. And typically, with you, Pat, I would have preferred if they had one or two, they should say it would be one, maybe two, but it was not there. But we've merged with them in the past, so I would think it would be
Yeah, it's been consistent. Yeah.
okay with Samantha, okay with the hockey program. I know a few of the ladies that, young ladies that play, and they need, it's good to have some more skaters. And for Lansing, anyway. And we would need a motion to.
I'll move the merger of the Lansing Central School District with the Ithaca City School District for girls varsity ice hockey.
Second.
Second by Chris. Any other questions on Lansing merging? We good? All in favor? Are we good? All right. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Moira. Thank you all. And then on to T-Burg and Trumansburg and merging for wrestling. Bit more detail here. Sounds like someone who really wants to wrestle.
It's just one student. I just got confirmation. One student.
Yeah, right, one student, right. Wrestling's not a real expensive sport. I was wondering why Trumansburg doesn't offer it, but again, it's a question of we have more opportunities here. So can move in second, and we can still entertain questions.
So I'll move 11.4, athletic merger with Trumansburg Varsity Wrestling.
Second.
Second by Moira. Any questions regarding this? We're probably good. All in favor? There we go. Everyone, thank you. So, Dr. Brown, is that it?
I think we're good, Dr. McDaniel. Thank you.
So, just want to touch base one more time. What does it say? Other discussion items or upcoming dates of importance? Other discussion items. We're pretty sure that we're going to need a meeting next week.
Most likely to vote on personnel items.
We're quite sure. Bob's nodding, so certainly for those of us here, if you can mark your calendar. Tricia, do a great job of sending out. Are you gonna come tonight? You know, we appreciate that. So we know we have a quorum ahead of time. If there's other items that we need to discuss next week, and we'll probably get more updates. So it doesn't have to be a long meeting, either one of them, next two, but we'll have an opportunity to get together and talk about what's important for the kids in this district. And so next Tuesday, 6 o'clock, right? Is that an okay time still? Just keep it at 6?
I will not be here. I know you'll be out of town. Same.
Was that the same? Erin, are you out?
I'm out of town.
All right. So we need to wrestle another board member.
I'll be here.
I'll be available.
Right, so we just need one more. So
We'll squeeze it together.
and haven't seen Eldred, so Eldred was coming back into town. So we'll get Eldred to show up. And Sean should be back as well. So we've got it. I think we'll be good. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tricia, as always. And thank you all in the seats out there for all you do every day. We're going to let you all go home, and because tomorrow's another day, right, Dr. Brown? And appreciate all your work. And we look forward to September. What's the date, Dr. Brown?
September 9th.
September 9th. So that will a day that's coming up. So thank you all. Let's all go home.